is, I mean, to me, it sounds like you to get to where you are now. You actually, on the face of it, it took only a few years when you actually started with your business model, but it was actually many, many more years in the making. Throughout you're accumulating lots of experiences that at the time might have seemed to be not necessarily related to what you would eventually end up doing. And that is something, that's actually very important in a lot of even our own lives, experiences of many people here, I'm sure, that, they say that failure helps towards success, but sometimes it's very difficult to really internalize that when you're failing, and you're faced with essentially some very hard choices, and you can't really see how failing could possibly help you succeed in the future. And when it does, it's only when maybe a decade later, or many years later, you look back, you sort of connect the dots and see that something that at the time seemed completely unlikely to help is actually very, very, very helpful.
Well, Henry Ford said that failure is an opportunity to begin again, only this time more intelligently. And I was always a kind of a riverboat gambler, I suppose, at the end of the day. I didn't really think through the implications or the potential implications of the decisions that I was making. And I certainly didn't think about the impact it was going to have on my family. But the lessons that I learned between 2000 and 2010 were kind of, well, I put money into a medical devices business, and the key lesson that I learned there was the gentleman who was my mentor. I realized he was actually just a normal human being and had his failings as well. And what I'd taken from him as being a sign of real strength actually ultimately proved to be a sign of weakness, and I now realize that. But he was very experienced at the time, and he just seemed to me to have all the answers. So clearly I looked to him and what he had been doing to try and emulate that as a pathway to my own success, which proved to be a failing, all things considered. And then I put some money into into a software business in Australia, which was designed to be an immigration vehicle for me to relocate my young family to Western Australia. And the $1.5 million Australian dollars later of mine and other people's money and 7 years worth of experience, I kind of realized that you can't expect your customer to change their behavior. And that was an absolute clarion call to me, because systematically what we'd done is we'd taken Microsoft Outlook, which is a great piece of software, but it can't be used by normal human beings because it was designed by people who have an engineering-centric view of the world, and they've got propellers in their heads. But if you understand the constituent parts of Microsoft Outlook, all the elements that you need to have present for a really good, efficient organizational tool are there, you can kind of turn it into a filofax, if you will, so to speak. And we spent all that money, all that time, and all that effort and energy in truly understanding how to solve that problem. And it was a real problem. The problem is that the solution lay in people making a tiny, tiny change in their behavior, and they wouldn't even do that. And so all of that effort, all of that energy, all of those resources, all of that passion just was worth nothing at the end of the day. So it was 7 years of sort of lessons in sort of understanding that. The other interesting thing about that for that business model for me was it gave me an opportunity for the first time to think about building a perfect business model. I'd always understood that there were opportunities to have a perfect business model conceptually, but I wasn't experienced enough really to think about it in the right way. And with Orla, that was the name of the business, we essentially had, for all practical purposes, the perfect business model. We might have adjusted the pricing somewhat. In hindsight, we probably would have wanted to give it away for free. But even though we did this major project, at the end of it all, it wasn't successful because people wouldn't change their behavior. And if you want to be successful in business, dealing with people, you've got to deal with people on their terms, not on your terms. You can't foist externalities onto people. They've got to receive your offering in whatever it is in a way that resonates with them. And then if you can do that, and you can inject other aspects into it, you can create something very close to market alignment, and that's what we experienced in the Hong Kong Visa Centre subsequently. But the genesis of that thinking really was in what I learned during the early years.
And do you think in 2000, was that when you started on this project, on the Orla project?
2002 is when I put the Orla project together, but the Microsolis project started in 98.
98.
Yeah.
So could that be that technology also changed over this decade, and so they actually gave you more and more tools to be able to connect with your audience at least in a different way?
Well, certainly in terms of Orla, the technology was definitely changing, but we didn't fail because the technology was changing. As I said, we failed because we expected people to change their behaviour.